So that means the next step on our list is the thing that you will use, well, all the time. Like I said, all programming language is a way to define logic with syntax, and logic is all about if this, do that. I mean, that's the basis of logic, which means that we need to introduce something called control flow within our program in order to have our program output a different result depending on conditions that we define. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce the basic if statement. Now, an if statement is the keyword if followed by parentheses. Inside of the parentheses, we place an expression. I'm going to place, in this case, the Boolean literal true, and then I'm going to complete the if statement by adding a block of code underneath it, and notice how it's now indented because there's a block of code. This is the most basic form of an if statement. Again, an if statement is keyword if followed by parentheses. Inside of there, we must have an expression that is either true or false, and then we must have a block that opens up, and anything inside of this block will execute if the condition that is within this within these parentheses is true. Now, in this case, I used what's called a Boolean literal. So this, in particular, isn't very important, or isn't a very useful example of an if statement because it has the if true. If Boolean literal true, which true is always true, and it's a literal, which means it's hard-coded into our program, and it'll always execute. But I just wanted to point out that what we have here is an example of the most basic if statement. If I run this code, it says, please enter my name, the if statement executed, your name is blah. So what we have here is if true, do this. Everything inside of these curly braces will be executed if this expression evaluates into the Boolean true, which means I can add as many of these lines as I want in between the opening and closing curly brace. If I were to say if false and hit F5, notice how none of this code runs. However, the code after the ending curly brace does run because it's not part of the if statement, but before, inside of the curly braces, nothing runs. That's because this if statement is evaluating to false. The expression inside of these parentheses turns into false because I'm, again, using the literal Boolean value false. Using the literal Boolean values for if statements is not going to be particularly useful ever because they're never going to change depending on what happens with your code.